information about the output here.
But this makes sense. Sorry. I didn't realize that it was with no training the first graph.
But the blue points are always highly correlated with the output, so I would think that blue must be the end of the network rather than the beginning.
That's an artifact of estimation. So.
But throughout training, it fits off.
And so you can see that.
But I think it makes sense.
There's still, while training, there's still compression happening, and all these points are sort of creeping down towards this point in the diagram on the top left, and this is where the information bottleneck is. So this is where we have the least information about the input, but we still regain all the information about our outputs. And they were using quite a small network, so it took quite a lot of epochs to train it. So I think they have like 10,000 epochs on this one. But at the end of the training, there's hardly any movement here.
So, excuse me.
Yeah.
But the first layers, they are at the end. The network is deterministic. So if the last layer, I think it makes sense around they also are correlated.
You would expect that layers towards the end, close to Y, would learn quicker about Y, which is why I think that blue probably is towards the end.
You have also the thing that the information between two layers is decreasing as you get closer to the last layer. So I think you need to have the layer on the top. It will always be more correlated. You will always have more correlation, I think, between the. Am I right? Between the first layer and the last layer, than between the last layer and the final output.
But the back propagation goes backwards, right? So that's why I would think that the closer you are to the output layer, the more information you get directly from the Y. I don't know.
Well, I can have give you a spoiler about why that is the way it is, or you want to wait for next week and then.
I already read the paper, so go ahead.
Yeah. So this was this was the information plane that they talked about. So this is us visualizing what happens inside the neural network in every layer throughout the training. So we have these two phases: first a rapid increase in both values, and then compression happening with the input, but we still have increased with the output. And so the conclusion, one of the conclusions that they say here is that this is the driver behind this compression is stochastic gradient descent. So this it bleeds stochasticity into the weights. And in the initial phase, the first 1,000 epochs, we have a very high mean for gradient, error gradients coming through the network, and they have very low variance. But then at some point, there is a shift, and suddenly the variance becomes much larger than the means. And so this is what they call a stochastic relaxation for the weights. And the weights basically start moving as a Wiener process into basic diffusion. So weights are completely noisy now, and we keep injecting noise into them, and this is why neural networks are good at generalizing, because they store all this noise in them and they're able to make predictions. And one of the claims that Tishby also makes is that that's why individual neurons are not very important in a network. And yeah, there is some reason about it.
Maybe it's a bit of a moot question, but they always talk about a phase transition.
Yeah.
Why is it not just a transition, right? So, because phase transitions are very different, right?
I think it's just a clash of terminology here, so it's not.
But they use a lot of terminology like critical slowing down, which are very typical for phase transition, but not for regular transitions, which.
Well, you're right. Tishby works with statistical mechanics quite a lot, so there is a lot of that background that brought into paper, and that is sometimes clashes with the experimental things that they show. They are kind of trying to apply that body of statistical mechanics to the evidence that they have. But there's not much rigor in this paper in particular. So sometimes they say that, oh, this happens, but then we'll give an explanation elsewhere. If you Google word elsewhere, I think there's like 5 mentions in that paper. And some other experiments that they made is that they looked what happens when you have different sizes of the data set. So if you have 5% of the data set and you train a neural network, the way it behaves on this information plate. Color here represents the epochs now, so instead of having a video, we can see that it started here and then we had all these values moving upwards, and then this is where it starts to overfit, and both it starts to compress the input, but also the output information starts to decrease because we're just learning more about that small portion of the data set. And it doesn't really represent the larger output that we've left out. And if we use 45%, it's looking better. We're not forgetting output as much as we did before, but when we give it more data, it's kind of steadily increasing until we reach some ceiling over here. And the only thing that's happening now is the compression phase where we forget the data set after a certain point. And if you look at the colors here, most of this dynamics happens very early. So by the time we hit red, we're already pretty much converged in terms of our information. And then we kind of slowly start to forget, but very little bit. This is the part where he kind of explains how stochastic gradient descent is bleeding noise into all these waves. And there are other visualizations as well. So he looked at the computational benefit of using a different number of layers and how that helps the network to have more information. So we can see him adding one layer at each one of these. And kind of the computational benefit here is that for this network, for example, with one layer, we need to get to the very end of the training, to the last epoch, and we still are getting more information. But if we look at networks with many layers, then most of the information gain happened very early. So because most of these lines are dark or purple, and by the time we hit epoch 2000, we already stopped extracting information from anywhere or compressing it. The training is basically done. And that's nice visualization of why going deeper is better, but then probably you hit other problems if you go too deep. And that's a sort of mathematical formulation of why that happens, because all of that noise is summed rather than all exponentiated. And the final important piece here is actually visualizing that there is a information bottleneck frontier, which is like where you can get this is the most efficient representation. And since you can compute the information bottleneck for a specific problem, they show that this is the frontier that they use for different values of data. And basically, no, actually that's different.